This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 365 of the DCAU Review. That's right. You can listen to one episode a day for an entire year, and by the time you finish, we'll have done another 52 episodes, so the cycle just never ends. But here we are, episode 365. We come to the dramatic finale of Super Fantas Month, and we finally got to the Fantas portion of that being with, of course, the latest live-action Fantastic Four movie hitting theaters this week. While we were tempted to go out and review maybe an old episode of the 90s Fantastic Four cartoon, we reeled it back in and instead thought we would look back at a DCAU tribute to the Fantastic Four. And yes, as mentioned, as I don't think I mentioned, I'm Liam, and with me, as he always is Cal. Cal, we've come to our bombastic finale, and this is a revisit of an episode we covered very, very early on of the podcast of Batman Beyond.
That's right. Episode 29 to be exact. So way back there, over 300 and nearly 330 plus episodes ago. So, yeah, it's a long time ago. It's a long time ago for anything. I feel like 2 weeks ago was a long time ago at this point. So, excited to look back on this episode. Not only did we look at this several years ago now, nearly 8 years ago at this point almost, but we also did it as a double feature with Shriek. And I remember us being a lot more excited and interested and finding a lot more interesting about the Shriek episode than we did this episode at original time. So I'm going to guess we may not have paid this episode quite as much as the deserved attention as we could have. So we're going to give it its due this time as we celebrate the Fantas portion of the Super Fantas month with the Fantastic Four movie hitting movie theaters this weekend, at least at the time of original recording. So if you went to see it, I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, I'm so very sorry that you wasted your money, and perhaps you'll appreciate the DCAU's version of the Fantastic Four a little bit more if you didn't quite enjoy Marvel's version. So yeah, excited to get a second look at this episode, Liam, that originally aired here in the United States on February the 20th, 1999. And as we said, we originally covered this episode back on episode 29. So we'll be looking at what our scores that we gave then. And as is our self-imposed rule, we will not be changing our scores, but we will certainly be discussing whether or not we feel like we were maybe a little too harsh, maybe a little too lenient. Would we, if we were scoring the same episode today, would our scores differ? The official score stands at what our original score was, but it'll be interesting to see whether any of those numbers change a little bit when we go through here.
Absolutely, Cal. Can't wait to get into that, and I'll of course, hit us with the official IMDb synopsis for this episode, heroes. But first, let's tell the folks a little bit about the best way to support the podcast, and that's at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review.
That's right, Liam. Buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. We said it last week when we were reviewing part 3 of The Last Son of Krypton that we are solely fueled on caffeine and compliments. That's pretty much what this whole podcast runs on, other than our passion for the DCAU, of course. So the things that help us going, keep us going, are the caffeine and the compliments, which of course can all be delivered most effectively using buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. So if you want to become a one-time supporter of the podcast, perhaps there's something that you like about this. Maybe you want to encourage us. Maybe you're saying, hey, listen, I would rather have heard you guys tear apart a 1994 Fantastic Four cartoon as an Elseworld. Sure. All right. Give us some incentive to do that. Let your voice be heard, so to speak. Or maybe you just like this episode and you like the idea of looking back at some of those earlier episodes that maybe didn't get their due praise or maybe critique. Then, hey, become a one-time supporter of the podcast, or you can become a monthly supporter, like some of our other supporters, like Sam and Zach and a few others have become, to be a monthly supporter of the podcast, which you can do at several different levels. We have 3 actually to support the podcast. And they each level comes with its own perk. And then of course, the top perk that we plug here each and every week is the Super Friend tier. Comes with a perk to ask us a question on the air and have your question answered right here on the air by me, by Liam. We will entertain your thoughts about that week's episode, whatever questions you have, whatever pops into your head that you want to think or have us discuss when it comes to the episode that we're reviewing that week. We give you the opportunity to throw those questions our way. We can get super nerdy. We can get super insightful. Or maybe we can just talk about things, speculative questions also. So we have a couple of those later on, Liam, that we'll address. But if you want to join them or become a one-time supporter of the podcast, why don't you check it out? Check out all the perks at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Head over and support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So without any further ado, let's look at the synopsis for Heroes, which is written by Rich Fogel, directed by Butch Lukic, with music by Michael McCuistion and animation by Coco and Dong Yang. And that synopsis reads as such. A trio of new superheroes make their debut, but they have dark secrets that lead to a disastrous crisis Batman must stop. Excelsior!
Nice job, nameless person who just happens to sound like a very famous person that takes a lot of credit for
complete coincidence.
Any resemblance to anyone living or dead, past or present, is clearly coincidental.
Yes, but we'll not a bad job on the synopsis, but yes, we'll get into our breakdown of the plot here. So, yeah, we get right to the action. As we started out, we see Batman out on patrol as some miscellaneous jetpack guys are flying around the city, having stolen some kind of valuable computer chip. And Batman forgets that he can fly and instead grapples, uses the old school like TNBA bat grapple to swing around and latch onto one of the guys, and is led on a bit of a merry chase. He manages to take down one of them, but is injured by the second one. And right as he's about to try to get back into the fray, he sees these 3 mysterious heroes pop up. A sort of translucent, gaseous woman, as in she's made of gas, not, Anyway, who can freeze people. We'll come to know her as Freon in a moment here. We see a large, grotesque monster of a man with lava-based powers and super strength. Of course, we find out he's Magma in a moment here, and then a stretchy guy. Well, another stretchy guy. We already had 2 stretchy guys. Now we got 3. And
at least. We don't know how many stretchy guys may have appeared between the time of Justice League Unlimited and this time. So,
well, right, and Rubber Band Man and Static. We got like 4 or 5 stretchy guys.
We've got at least enough to field like an NBA hoop squad of stretchy guys.
100%. But yes, this new trio of alleged heroes make quick work of our jetpack thieves, and we see a little crowd forming, and is quite taken with them as Batman's left a little confused as to who these people could be. And we cut. Thankfully, there's a exposition newscast that we see Terry's brother Matt and his friend watching the next day.
Magma, Freon, and the 2D Man. Who is this terrific trio? Tonight, we've got the exclusive inside story. Several months ago at the Bay Ridge Research Center, prize-winning physicist Dr. Mike Morgan, his fiancée Mary Michaels, and lab assistant Stuart Lowe were accidentally exposed to dangerous levels of radiation during a particle fusion experiment. We warn viewers that the tape we're about to show may be too intense for children.
Turn it up.
The result, their bodies underwent dramatic changes. Now, these heroes have promised to use their incredible abilities to clean up Gotham. The government has spared no expense in establishing their new base of operations, the Trio Tower. United in their war on crime, here comes the terrific trio.
Looks like I'll be having a lot more time to do my homework now.
We'll see.
And they're the new, U.S. government approved superheroes in town, and Terry wonders if that might put him out of a job, but Bruce isn't so sure just yet. And as we cut now to, I guess, the next night in Gotham, we see that Commissioner Barbara Gordon is arriving on the scene of a hostage situation. A group of men have kidnapped a woman and a child and are holding them for ransom. The lead criminal is very, very braggadocious, very confident that they're going to have to pay his ransom in order to save this woman and child. And we found out that it's because it's a city councilman's family, and therefore the police are not willing. Boy, with like subtle accidental commentary. The only reason the cops don't run in there guns blazing is because it's a city councilman's family. Interesting. Interesting. Anywho, but as the one thug continues to sort of taunt Barbara, and they mention that they have a plan B, which is this timed bomb that they have to set off, which they set right next to the little girl who's tied up.
Wait, just a little more time. That's all I'm asking. Hope you have better luck.
This is Gordon.
Finally, someone with a real line of credit.
No deals until I know the hostages are safe.
Sweetheart, I've already been through this with your Cub Scouts. I'm looking at my foreign account right now and still no donations. You better hurry, love. Telethon's over in 5 minutes.
Should we go in?
We can't take the chance. That's Councilman Green's family in there.
She'll cave.
And if she don't?
Plan B.
Guess who?
Hey!
What's the matter, boys? Cold feet?
Wrong door, Einstein.
Move in!
Freeze!
Been there, done that.
Who should pop up but the aforementioned terrific trio, as Freon and 2D Man make short work of most of the bad guys. And as Magma comes bursting into the room, the little girl is terrified as he grabs hold of the bomb that's positioned right next to her. And he has, actually, funny enough, kind of a Superman thing here, where he like holds it in his hand and lets it explode, therefore not allowing any damage to come to the woman or her child. And as we cut to outside this warehouse where this standoff was happening, we see all of the thugs being loaded into the back of a police cruiser. And we see Magma try to approach the woman and her daughter, but the daughter is still quite terrified by Magma's giant lava man appear. Fair enough, by the way. This, like, the thing, it's always kind of portrayed as like, oh, it's, he's not a monster and people just judge him by the way he looks. It's like, okay, but this guy's made of lava. He could accidentally just melt her face. So, like, a little bit more understandable than just being a rock man, I think. But that's that's one of our many Fantastic Four similarities here, is the big monster man who's burdened by how people judge him based on his appearance. So it's very Marvel. It's very The Thing coded for sure. So as Magma is kind of frustrated by everything, he kind of walks off, smashing a police car as he walks by, as it's clear that he's very much unhappy with how it all went down. We cut back to Trio Tower, where we see Magma complaining about how frustrated he is by the whole situation, about how he feels like he's a freak. He can't even hold his fiancée Freon's hand anymore. And of course, then the fourth. So there was supposed to be a fourth guy, apparently. Their friend Howard Hodges arrives and tells them that everything's going to be fine. And he's going to find a cure.
You saw the way she looked at me. We're freaks.
Michael, please.
I can't even hold you in my arms anymore.
It's hard for all of us.
I can imagine, my dear. You wouldn't have to imagine if you'd been there.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out that budget meeting you went to that night.
What are you implying?
Calm down, Mike. It's not like he knew this was going to happen.
Mary, you know how much I care for you. All of you. And we're doing everything we can to find a cure.
You should let me help.
Michael, you can't even touch a test tube without melting it. Better you stay here where you can do some real good.
They leave the trio feeling quite frustrated as we cut to the next day, where we see Terry and Matt at the mall together with tons of Terrific Trio action figures and T-shirts as the store employee, just being a real jerk without knowing it, is talking about how finally there's a real superhero in Gotham that kids can look up to. But Matt disagrees. He's more of a Batman guy himself, and Terry, of course, appreciates that silently. And we then cut to, okay, normally this sort of thing would wait for visuals, but at this point he becomes an important part of the episode. We can't talk. The general has a Hitler mustache. The military guy in charge of the Terrific Trio has a Hitler mustache.
I would like,
and so General Hitler and Dr. Hodges,
General Norman Hitler.
Yes. We assume Norman's his first name because, I mean, the last name.
He can't go by his last name.
Adolf Norman.
Right. There's a question. I have many questions about, I guess it is. We'll talk about it in visuals. We cannot not talk about it in visuals.
But I couldn't wait. So anyway, General Norman, no last name, and Hodges are discussing things. They mention that they're checking these DNA scans of the trio, and it seems like their DNA is becoming more and more unstable.
These are the trio's latest DNA scans.
Has anyone seen this?
No, sir.
I'll run them again. We've got to be absolutely certain.
Yes, sir.
General Norman, we've got a problem.
Meanwhile, so then we cut back to the scientist who's once again looking at the DNA, and he gets cracked over the back of the head with a chair by a mysterious force. I assume he's dead. Like, we just That's the implication, it seems, that the scientist that discovered the DNA breakdown is dead because they didn't want the information to get out. I guess. I don't know. But as you mentioned, as Terry is out speaking with Bruce, talking about how he doesn't even know why he has a responsibility to patrol Gotham anymore, since things are very quiet, since the terrific trio are about. The heat scanner on the Batmobile picks up a hot spot, and it just happens to be, as you mentioned, a very unlikely thief coming out of a lab. It is Magma, who is in no mood to talk. Clearly, Terry tries to stop him. He is not interested in talking. He beats Terry up a little bit, throws him around, and manages to get into what I have dubbed the Terrificar to escape from Terry after beating him up a little bit. Terry is able to catch onto the Terrificar right at the very end, and it leads him to, I guess, the tower where, because that's where the next scene takes place. So to the trio tower, and inside, Magma brings in the cube, and a very disappointed Freon and 2D Man are there. They apparently already know that he broke into the lab and stole this cube. The cube appears to have the information from the DNA scan. How Magma knew that this information was in there feels like we lost some part of the story at some point, but he just happened to know that the information was there. Maybe he's the one that knocked out the scientist. Maybe that's the implication. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. But either way, he takes the DNA cube at that point, has the information, and he shares the information with the rest of the group, saying that not only are their conditions irreversible, but it's also even worse.
I can't believe you broke into the lab.
Why would you take such a risk?
I had to know the truth. But Hodges said... Hodges lied. See for yourself.
It'll be like this forever.
No, it's worse than that. What happened?
We're under attack!
It's General Norman. We've been double-crossed. Hit him hard. Don't let him get away.
Before he can even continue, that's when General Norman and the entire U.S. Army begin just blowing holes into the side of the trio tower. I guess it's endgame for the terrific trio. They are just pelted with an armory of lasers and missiles and smoke bombs and all these other things. So very clearly, the trio is under attack by the U.S. Army. Terry is confused. He thought all these people were heroes. They're clearly nobody's a hero in this. And he ends up getting caught up in the battle, but manages to survive despite some very heavy, gigantic things falling on him multiple times. He is able to survive and escape getting crushed a second time. And as it appears that the Fantasticar makes its escape, the army follows it on its way and destroys it. They believe that they have destroyed the terrific trio at that point, where the general radios back to Hodges saying that he knows it was Hodges' friends, but this had to be done. Meanwhile, Terry, back at the scene, realizes that it was all a ruse, that the car must have been set on autopilot. Very similar to Jor-El's thing. I guess not autopilot, but they just sent the car on its way as a decoy. Jor-El's plan made it all the way from Krypton here to the year 2049 or whatever it is, 50 years from now, whenever now is. Very similar vibes here from that. But Terry discovers that Magma has tunneled into the ground and I guess follows his trail as we learn that the trio is headed back someplace. And we cut back to as General Norman is talking about the death of the trio. He reminds him that he told Norman about their deteriorating condition and would have eventually made them dangerously psychotic. So that was another part of the fact that they were concerned and why the Army ultimately decided to do away with the trio. But just when it seems like he's about to come to the acceptance point of the loss of his friends, we hear something in the background. Hodges grabs a weapon from under his desk, but before he's able to use it, his hand is frozen.
Hello, Howard.
We have to talk.
We've been reviewing the data on the particle fusion experiment.
According to your notes, you knew about the danger.
No, I had no idea this would happen.
Just a freak accident.
Yes, 1 in a million. Wait, what are you doing?
Finishing what we started.
But you can't.
Why not?
You'll kill us all. Once it reaches critical mass, the radiation can't be contained.
Then you knew all along.
Yes.
That's why you weren't there that night.
Yes, and you weren't supposed to be either.
What?
Michael had it all. The brains, the success, your affection. I figured with him out of the way, I'd have a chance.
You figured wrong.
Here's the real bombshell. He did it because he was jealous. He was jealous of Magma. He had the fame, the brains, the looks, and he had Freon as his fiancée. And he actually had originally planned, somehow not really explained, for Freon not to be there. He mentions that she was not supposed to be there as well. But at the last minute, she was and ended up being affected. So his whole plan to steal the girl and have her fiance rubbed out in the same tragic incident was for naught. So meanwhile, the Magma decides that he's going to once again restart the particle accelerator. Thankfully, Batman arrives just moments later. And there is a fight that ensues between the terrific trio and our Dark Knight as the Dark Knight continues to try and stop the particle accelerator from continuing. Unfortunately, there is some casualties, I would say, in the midst of this fight. Batman opens up a ventilation system.
Batman kills people. That's what happens here.
Gotta shut that thing off. Thousands of people will die. Matt, Dr. Morgan, you can't let that happen. You're a hero, remember?
No, I'm an accident. Real heroes, they make a choice. I never did.
Yeah, there's some interesting things that happen here. Turns on these giant fans on the ceiling, these vents that suck 2D Man and Freon through them. And then so it's just Magma.
Well, 2D Man gets pulled into the vent.
Mm-hmm.
Freon is just like her entire body evaporates, and she just gets pulled apart screaming and evaporates into the air.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Stuff. And then Batman then has to deal with Magma at that point. Magma's still around, very angry, seems to be getting the upper hand and stopping Batman. Batman's almost able to press the off button for the machine, but Magma gets in his way. Batman tries to reason with him, but is unable to break through, so he's hurled across the room, spots a gigantic fire hose, turns that on, and I guess that is enough to simply cool down Magma to a point where he hardens like cooled lava rock. So he's just one big lava rock at that point. And Batman deactivates the system. We are now just left with Batman and Dr. Hodges.
Satisfied.
No, you don't understand. I was their friend.
Right.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. So yeah, we can get into our plot thoughts here. Overall, I feel like if you strip away, which is funny because it's the whole reason we're talking about this for the second time, is the Fantastic Four parody element of this, the Marvel homage element of this. This is pretty thin, I think, as an episode. Like, I don't know, just it's maybe if we had longer, maybe if these characters, I know this isn't really how they did things back then, this is pre-GLU. There really wasn't like those longer term storylines, but if these characters were around for a while and then you did this big episode was like a season finale or something, maybe it would feel, but it's like as it stands, we meet these guys, they're superheroes for 5 seconds, and then Magma turns evil, and not evil, but he kind of loses his mind and decides, well, he does turn evil because then he's going to nuke basically the entire city at the end,
right,
in order to get revenge on Hodges. So it goes beyond just like revenge. Like they go from being superheroes, and I know there's a bit there, and they do kind of acknowledge that because Magma has a line about when Batman tries to reason with him and he says, you're a hero, you save people, and he said no because heroes make a choice. I never got to, or something like that. So that's kind of the idea, is he never truly saw himself as a hero, so he doesn't really see himself as a villain. He's just a wronged man at this point, I guess, but with nothing to lose. But I guess since it appears their DNA, they're going to die soon. So I don't know. It's fine. But as if you take away the Marvel homage stuff, it's like, I don't know. There's just some guys that show up and then they try to nuke the city at the end. And it's like the big reveal that the guy betrayed him. It's like, well, yeah, of course it was. Like that angle, the angle of them being like a U.S. government funded superhero team is again interest picked up again in JLU later on with like the Ultimen. So it's like that's an interesting idea, but it's like you put a bunch of stuff in here and then none of it's really paid off because it becomes more of this, standard revenge story by the end. So I feel like there's a lot of interesting ideas and fun ideas in here, but maybe just too much for 22 minutes to flesh any of them out.
Well, before I talk about my explanation or my thoughts on that, I will say that this was a very low score for plot for both of us. So I gave it a 3 and you gave it a 4 when we did this originally. So those are darn near some of the lowest scores, probably top 10, top 15 of lowest scores of a plot that we may encounter here. So not great scores there. I think there are times where this episode feels a bit like a mashup of a couple of different ideas. And unfortunately, I think the reveal of Hodges being jealous of Magma at the beginning, like it isn't revealed until that final scene, which is very, very, very quick to then resolve at the end. Like it's the end of the episode. We have like 3 minutes after that where that's revealed. And it's meant, I feel like, to feel like this gigantic betrayal, but we don't really have enough time to establish a relationship between those characters for that to feel any, like there's no weight to it at all. It's just, I don't really care about any of these characters. There's also the storyline of that I think you could have followed on, which is the idea that the heroes, the thing that you talked about, like the thing homage with Magma feeling like he can't be a hero because of not being accepted and because of the way his powers make him look. So maybe that influences him. And he kind of says it in his speech with Batman at the end, where Batman tells him, like, you're a hero. And he says, no, heroes are given a choice, or you choose to be a hero. And, I feel like that would have been more impactful if we just come to the realization. Like I don't know how you kind of expand upon that idea that because of his own visual or for his insecurities about his physical appearance, how that turns him into a villain or straight up, influences him becoming a villain. But I feel like that's a pretty common trope. So maybe it wouldn't have been that difficult. So I don't know. You have a couple of different ideas here. I think it would have been interesting also if, maybe I don't know. I'm not gonna rewrite the full episode, but maybe Freon and Hodges having a pre-existing relationship behind, Magma's back would have made that feel like that, if that's part of the reveal also, not that he was just like, hey, well, maybe in this fantasy world I'll kill Magma and you'll be like my girl at that point. Like that just kind of seems like, comes out of nowhere. So I just think that there's too many things here. You're introducing 3 brand new characters. There's not a lot of time to really care about them. I think we talked about that on some of the static episodes too, where you introduce a character and you turn him from kind of the good side to the bad side within a very short amount of time. You're not really given a proper ability to kind of care about the character, to have that turn to the dark side, so to speak, really impact you. So I feel like it's just, it doesn't feel impactful. We also have this storyline with Terry, like feeling like maybe he's being replaced or there's no need for him anymore, which I feel like there's a couple of episodes where that's a general theme that we have for him, where he's wrestling with the idea of whether or not he needs to be Batman or not. And I think there was always something that you could have gone a little bit deeper on and what that looks like. And I think here, him having an identity crisis and deciding whether or not he's important or not, and then having it rewarded by Matt thinking, saying that Batman's cool, like having that played out a little bit more also could have been interesting, where, they realized that these heroes that had this meteoric rise to stardom and fame, weren't the right people. That the old stalwart Batman is really the old faithful for Gotham's hero. So there's just too many things here that I think that just feel kind of like a hodgepodge or ideas that were kind of just threads that were just kind of left open at the end, or just not a lot of I feel like care went about with some of the details here. I mean, our writer, obviously, Mr. Rich Fogel, who is a brilliant writer, done a lot of great stuff in the DCAU. So it's difficult for me to say like he didn't care about this stuff, but I think it just feels like some of this stuff just is kind of mush-mashed together and could have been, I don't know, could have been done with a little bit more care, and maybe just pick a lane and stick with that idea instead of kind of throwing all these things in together. The betrayal, they're replacing Batman, the struggling with, being ugly and being a hero, like all of that, kind of just pick one of those. And I think you probably would have ended up with a little bit more of a coherent story to tell.
Yeah, I think that is, that's all. It's just, it's packed through. Like, because like, speaking of Marvel homages, like we could lead up to like a Spider-Man No More thing with Terry, where he throws down the suit and goes it as a regular student, and then maybe you reveal that the trio is losing their minds or whatever. Like I said, I just maybe a 2-parter, maybe a season-long arc where these characters are like, maybe they're not in every episode, but they're like a recurring, B plot or recurring characters in this world for a while before we build up to this finale. Maybe that would have been something they could have tried. But as it stands, it just feels like, hey, let's it would be fun to have villains, quote unquote, that are this homage to the Fantastic Four, and then let's throw in this and that, and then it's like it's a little bit of because the way it all kind of works out, it does almost feel like a Batman the Animated Series villain plot, as far as just like a guy who was set up by his friend and then seeks revenge by the end. But like I don't know, it just doesn't all come together, unfortunately. And yeah, I think some of the ideas in it are very interesting, but they're just not expanded upon, like you said, and that's a shame. So I believe you said I gave it a 4 and you gave it a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'd be, 4 maybe. Like I didn't hate this episode. We'll talk about it. There's a lot of fun in vision, but I think everything I'm gonna say that I liked about it, it's gonna be in visuals and music and voice acting. So it's like, yeah, I think plot wise, this is kind of weak. And also, Batman kills a lady and possibly another guy.
Yeah.
So I don't love that. Like, anyway, and yeah, and then it just kind of ends. Batman just walks out of the lab, and we just kind of fade to black, which I feel like we've talked about that a lot of these beyond episodes as well. Just have very abrupt endings sometimes. So yeah, not strong. Like I said, like I love the idea of doing, like we said, the Fantastic Four homage. I almost wonder if it wouldn't have made sense to do that here. There is a Fantastic Four homage character already in DC. It's the cyborg Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Because his origins were like basically the Fantastic Four origins, except all of his fellow astronauts died horrible, like radiation related deaths, and he ended up in a robot body. But so it's like, I don't know, could you work that in some way or something? I don't know. Like, there's not. Yeah, it seems it's too early in the series to introduce the Superman villain, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's fun that it exists. It's a fun episode in that way if you're a Marvel Comics fan, but it's not really as an episode on its own. There's too much introduced here, from the government sponsored superhero team to the betrayal to the Magma isn't accepted by the public like the other members because he's an ugly monster, to Terry being like almost put out of a job by these new heroes in town. Like, yeah, there's just too much going on.
Yeah, I would probably stick around with my, I don't know, if a 3 feels like something that I should reserve for things that are just slightly better than, Superman's pal or something like that. So I feel like 3 is a little bit harsh. I'm not going to split hairs and say, well, I cannot give it a 3. I'd give it a 4. So I would probably stick with the score that I have. It is unfortunately disappointing in the plot area. There is some interesting stuff we'll talk about in some of our other categories, but I think unfortunately, for an episode that I was super excited to review, and actually, like, the beginning kind of starts off on the right foot, it just kind of peters out towards the end. So kind of a little bit of a letdown with the rest of the plot. So I'd probably stick with my 3.
There you go. And from there, we will move on to our visuals and animation section of the episode here. Once again, this one was directed by Butch Lukic, and the animation services provided by Coco and Dong Yang. Now, obviously, we've talked about the Fantastic Four, the Marvel influence on this, but so I think we can start with our terrific trio designs and power sets here. Awesome. All like that Magma design's really cool. Like he's a little Clayfacey in like his general like shape and girth and like the way his mouth moves and stuff. But like the all black, yeah, but like the all black skin with these glowing kind of red lines all over him and the red eyes and everything. Like, I love that Magma design a lot. But what are your thoughts on the terrific trio designs?
Yeah, I remember us, if I recall correctly, picking a little bit on that, like that Magma kind of just looks like the Clayface model, just painted dark.
Burnt Clayface.
Yeah, burnt Clayface. Yeah.
You left him in the oven too long.
It's fine. I think the visualization of his powers are a little bit more interesting. I do like the fact that when he walks, he leaves like that molten, because Neo Gotham, every building appears to be made of like metal or lead or something like that. So when he walks on the ground, he leaves like a melted footprint. And then of course there's several times where he walks through walls or burrows into the ground and you see these melting hot lava circles of metal that he's leaving behind, trails of metal leaving behind. So yeah, I think that the visualization of his powers are interesting too. We don't get a ton. I think we get some fire coming off of him, like kind of shooting out of his hands. Yeah, I think the more the visuals are in the way that he kind of moves and some of the aftermath of his presence there. Freon, I think, is interesting because it looks like if Bruce Timm drew a Marvel character, a Marvel girl character. So she kind of has a little bit of like the Starfire thing going with her hair. It kind of falls down really low and then kind of melts into the trail that she kind of leaves behind as the Freon character. She of course is transparent also, so you kind of get to see the action happening behind her. So that's an interesting visual element also. Her manifestation of her powers, obviously everything is cold, so it's not all that different than something you would see with Mr. Freeze. I do like the bit where Magma holds Freon's hand briefly, or attempts to, and his hand freezes completely. That's a touching moment and an interesting visualization. I think 2D Man, I remember us kind of picking apart that it's difficult to translate on a 2D format, so your animation that is generally 2D anyway, that is presented as three-dimensional, and then trying to then make one of your characters appear two-dimensional within that two-dimensional world is a little bit difficult. So I think it's okay. I think there are moments where it works better than others. I think the sequence, of course, where we get to see him do the classic like trampoline gimmick where they're chasing the Rocketeer group and he's able to kind of catch the falling guys and bounce them back up using his giant expanded belly is great. There's another sequence, I think, when they're going up against the army where he gets these gigantic like fists and they kind of bend and you can kind of see the edges. I thought that was the most interesting and effective way of kind of translating when you could see his hands up close that they're two-dimensional, that they're flat. So I wish we got a little bit more of him as a stretchy guy, but I think even in the fight against Batman at the end, all three of them look really interesting. The destruction of 2D Man and Freon are, man, they're pretty haunting, as we talked about. 2D Man getting sucked up into the vent and you kind of just almost mentally hear him rip apart, and then you visually see Freon, as you mentioned, just evaporated and tear apart with this horrific scream that we can maybe mention in our voice acting. Is, boy, that's an image that won't leave my brain for a while. I think overall the decision to go with 3 instead of 4, you combine the Human Torch with Magma, or with Thing, and you get Magma, is kind of interesting. You still create the idea of the Invisible Woman, but she's gaseous instead of completely not visible to the eye. And then you kind of keep the same idea with Mr. Fantastic and 2D Man. I appreciate the homages there, and I think overall, I think the pastiche works. I think the logo is interesting. It's kind of a lightning bolt. It's kind of a 3. It's certainly a striking logo, that's for sure. It kind of looks like 2D Man, also kind of stretched out in a certain way if you look at it one way. So yeah, some really cool aesthetics there. I mean, the fact that they gave them their own version of For Freedom Plaza with the gigantic 3 on the building instead of the gigantic 4, I think that's really great. Obviously, we talked about the Terrificar, although it doesn't have 4 seats like the animated series Fantastic Car did, but we'll accept it as a single spaceship. But really, I think as we mentioned during the description, really the headline for this has to be our general, who has the most unfortunate mustache in human history. Do we think that like the writers were like, hey, in the future, 50 years from now, whenever now is, the stigma surrounding the Charlie Chaplin mustache is long gone, and therefore somebody in a militaristic position will have no problems, no comparisons, no worries about being compared to or looking like the most infamous murderer, mass killer in human history.
Unbelievable. Like, it's so bizarre. Because like you would, of course, Marvel proud tradition of like a weird sort of crooked general character, the Thunderbolt Ross, character, very famous in the comics and all that. So like having if this is your Marvel homage episode, I totally get the idea of having like a weird military, rogue general involved in the story or whatever. But it's it's instead of just having like the big bushy mustache or a goatee or something, he's got that listen, if the most famous basketball player of a generation, Michael Jordan, could not bring back that stash when he tried in those Hanes commercials like 15 years ago, there's no chance that you certainly can't be in the military and have this mustache. I feel like
precisely. Read the room, General. Read the room.
Really, yeah. Even beloved superstar basketball player and star of Space Jam 1, Michael Jackson could not. Michael Jordan could not pull off the chaplain stash.
Yeah.
Much less a military leader 50 years from now, whenever now is. Yeah, what a bizarre choice, and it's very distracting. Thankfully he's only in like 2 or 3 scenes, but every time he shows up, I'm just staring at it. I'm like, why would they do that? Like, I don't know if anyone listening to this from the sound of my voice can put us in touch with like Butch Lukic or anyone else that would have worked on this episode. Please, we'll never ask for another favor like this again, but I need to know
why.
Why does he have the Hitler stash?
Please. Yeah. It gets to the point where it's funny. Like, it is funny at the end, but it's not funny like, haha. It's funny like, boy, somebody just really didn't think, did they? Or maybe they did. Maybe they were trying to make, like, was there a point there? Like, if there was an obvious point, like, Terry has the line about the government or the, thinking that the military was supposed to be heroes. Like, was this an idea of like, don't assign good, bad, evil to a government controlled entity that is, used to enforce whatever will that they are trying? Like, is this some sort of social commentary here that it's the guy in charge of this is like a dictator? Like, I don't know. Like, I could not pull the string to come up with a logical reason for this guy to have a mustache, because there's no obvious commentary on the character either. So instead, it just turns out to be an extremely distracting section of the episode where we have this guy who's just kind of got a Hitler mustache.
He pulls focus from everything else, honestly. But otherwise, I think the action bits are fun. There's a shot where when the military guys break in at the end to attack the trio, where one of them shoots magma, and so he gets like this wound on his arm, and it just lava starts pouring out of him, like, instead of blood. I thought that was a really cool gag. There's like I like the visualization of of everybody's powers to the extent. Yeah, like you said, the 2D man probably the lamest of the 3, but also it's like, he's, maybe that's, again, as we joked about, we've seen every kind of stretchy guy trick. So it's like, okay, he makes his hands big, or he makes a trampoline, or he like spins his body around and ties somebody up. It's like, all right, that's all standard fare. But it's I think it all looks good. It's all animated pretty crisply, and it looks pretty good. Obviously, I remember talking about this in our original review, but yes, the other thing is that when Terry is kind of caught in the wreckage, when the military is attacking, and has that big piece of debris fall on him, that is like directly ripped from an issue of Spider-Man, a very famous issue of Spider-Man, where he confronts the master planner, I believe. So that's a really cool homage. I know, like I said, I know we talked about that. It's Amazing Spider-Man number 33 is the issue that's being referenced there. But yeah, it's overall, I think visuals certainly probably the strongest part of the episode. And I ended up settling on an 8 out of, or if we were rescoring it, I think I'd be around maybe a 7 or an 8, probably an 8 for my visuals, just because I did appreciate the trio designs maybe a little bit more than it sounds like we did in our original review.
Yeah, I think if you're going to bump your score up, because yours was a 6 and mine was a 7, I would probably go a point higher. Sure, I'll take that. I think this is what really does carry the episode for me. Outside maybe of there's some good music we'll talk about in a second, and of course voice acting. But I think this really is the standout in a plot that, unfortunately, as we mentioned, tends to let things down a little bit. At least the characters, the homages, the little things that are clearly the crew here having some fun with the what ifs. What if Bruce Timm got the opportunity to do an animated Marvel show? Like that's the essential play out here. So that, and the rest of the crew, of course, not just Bruce Timm, but I do think that the visuals are interesting enough. And I think even some of the things at the end, I will say one of the weird things that I found, I was watching this, which I assume is the remastered Blu-ray versions of these cartoons on HBO Max, but there's like 2 scenes where it's very clear that they did not remaster the. There's a scene where Batman is sitting, he's like in the foreground and the background is blurred, and then it kind of switches where he's blurred and the background is kind of clearer. That looked very wonky. And then there's a scene during the fight, I think, in the reactor room where it's very clear that they missed that sequence to up-res it. It's very strange. So again, that's obviously not that's a modern problem, not an issue with the original visuals. But I did think that stood out as something that was very interesting in this modern age of remastered animation. But yeah, overall, there's some really good stuff there that are to be enjoyed when you're viewing it. I think there's a shot where 2D man. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about it, but the fight between Batman and the Terrific Trio at the end, the shot where Batman finally gets the upper hand and like 2D man really gets his butt handed to him because he gets his face smashed by magma. His head goes like through the wall. And then Freon accidentally freezes him and magma. And then he gets sucked up into this vent at the end. It's just like, poor 2D man was having a no good, very bad day at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely I would say visuals are the strongest part of the episode, but that will move us on to our third category, which is music. And thankfully, Cal, as you reminded me before we went on the air here, we actually can listen to this soundtrack, and everyone listening can. If you go onto the digital platform music platform of your choice, you can find this on the Batman Beyond Volume 1 soundtrack that was released. So the music by Michael McQuistion in this case is available in isolation. I think there's one obvious big glaring Marvel homage in the music at the end, which we can talk about in a minute. But what stood out to you as far as music for this week?
Yeah, there are 7 tracks that are available on the soundtrack, so make sure you go and check that out. I'm sure they're probably on YouTube as well if you want to check those out. But shout out to our dynamic music partners for doing everything they do to make those available so that we can, as opposed to when we first reviewed this 6-7 years ago, we were begging for a release of these so that we can better understand and appreciate the actual pieces. We now have that availability, so thankful that we have that. But yes, of the 7 pieces, I think there's a couple that stand out. There's one that during the news piece where they're giving you the visual of the actual transformation of our heroes, which, speaking of which, that was an interesting visual also, the kind of the cam footage, the visual there of our heroes that will eventually turn villains, their transformation there. I thought that was a great visual. But during that, there's sort of this news theme that plays underneath of it, and then once the transformation actually takes place, we have an actual what turns out to be kind of a terrific trio theme. And it's there's nothing I don't think that it compares with as far as something that you would go like, that's a Fantastic Four theme, at least that stood out for me. But it is certainly like, oh, this is this heroic team's theme. And then it's kind of played again later on, during the rescue sequence for the city councilman's wife and daughter. So they kind of bring it back for that. So I kind of like that. There's some kind of standard, beyond fare, the deep bass with the synthesizer that plays to kind of set some of the mystery happening in and around certain scenes, with the scientist getting knocked out or Terry doing some reconnaissance, stuff like that's played out. But then there's a really great, I think, inverted version almost of the Beyond theme that plays during the fight between Magma and Terry and Batman. There's just a great theme that kind of plays. It sounds very similar in the way that the notes progress to the Beyond theme, but it's kind of inverted. So that one was great. But then, as you alluded to, I think the real standout as far as a classic Marvel homage comes from the final sequence that we get. And it's funny because I think this isn't the very first time that we've mentioned this homage. It feels like it does come up over a couple of different shows here occasionally, and maybe it's just a testament to the usage and familiarity that we have with the source material, or where we assign that its origin. But we get a real deep rocky theme between Batman and the Terrific Trio at the end, and then once the Terrific Trio is sort of vanquished and he's left there to converse with Dr. Hodges, he's kind of left there to mourn, quote unquote, the death of his friends or the defeat of his friends. And we get this real subtle piano theme, which I think we both had marked down as a bit of a Marvel homage.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, of course, a musical Easter egg reference to the 1970s Incredible Hulk TV series, which of course starred Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. And the deal was the sort of procedural nature of that show was, Bruce Banner goes to a new town, and then eventually he gets turned into the Hulk throughout the course of the episode to fight whoever the bad guys are. And of course, once it's revealed that he's the Hulk, he can't stay in that town. So every episode ends with him sort of walking down the road or like trying to hitchhike to the next town as he continues to be on the run. And it was always accompanied by this sort of sad piano music as he would be, walking down the road at the end of the episode. And that's very much, I think, on the mind of Mr. McQuistion and his musical selection as Batman sort of looks back at all of the chaos that's just surrounded him and sort of leaves Dr. Hodges to sort of live with his with the terrible things he's done to his friends. This very sad piano music comes in there, and it's like, oh, that's like, I think that's an immediate for anyone who's even a little familiar with that Hulk TV show of why that's there at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very easy to pull, and as we said, we have multiple different, not just the Fantastic Four. We have Spider-Man. We have maybe some Hulk, maybe some Nick Fury or something like that with some of our agents here and working alongside our general. But the Hulk piano at the end, there's another one of those classic Marvel homages that seem to stand out. So with our music scores were originally both gave it 6. I'd probably hover around there, maybe up a notch, maybe 1 for that Terrific Trio theme, now that I can kind of listen to it in isolation and hear it return. But 6 or 7. I'm probably not going to fight myself on that. I think a 6 is fine.
Yeah, I don't think I would change my score much. Yeah, I think it's a good solid outing, but nothing necessarily spectacular that really stood out as particularly special this time around. And from there, Cal, that will leave us to our final category of the day here, which is, of course, our voice actors, and some fun ones as we were researching the voice cast for this one, as far as other roles they've played over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go through these. So, of course, we have a rather large main cast here, with having 3 antagonists in our 4, if you count our untransformed antagonist here. But starting out, this one I found very interesting. So, playing the little girl of the city councilman, the one who's terrified of magma, is an actress by the name of Fiona Landers. And it's interesting because the DCAU wiki makes a point of noting that Miss Landers is actually the daughter of Murphy Cross and Matt Landers, and you may not know those people by name, but Murphy Cross is the voice actress that voiced Grace, also Harvey Dent's fiance, and her father was the voice of Frankie, who was in Rupert Thorne's gang, and also played Louis, the guy who creates the robot in Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. So she is I guess that's kind of like DCAU voice acting royalty in a sort of way there. She's like the offspring of that. So very, very interesting that it stays in the family there, the voice acting skills there from some players that played some small but memorable parts in DCAU history there. So very interesting with that one. Briefly, we had Don Harvey, who plays one of our kidnappers. He is probably best known in the DCAU. He played Chucko, and he also played Gnaw in The Main Man, the little guy with the face. He has 2 eyes, but his eye has a mouth also and eyes. So yeah, he played Chucko. Of course, in Return of the Joker and Once a Future Thing also. So nice to hear a familiar voice as well. Not a ton for him there. And we had David Walsh, who is playing one of our Rocketeers. He plays Captain Croissant in Superman's Pal. Just wanted to mention Superman's Pal, dollar
in the jar.
Bad episode jar. Yep, it's been a while since I've put $1 in there. So good mention of that one there. We had Jan Rabson as the voice of our Rocketeer leader. He's interesting. He has another DCAU role. He played the Professor Ehrlich in Paradise Lost as well. Again, not a ton for them to do. They're kind of in passing as far as their roles are concerned, but does have another DCAU role on his resume. We have Kevin Dunn, not that one. Kevin Dunn playing Howard Hodges. So the alliterative name there. Another thing we'll talk about with our other heroes here, the alliteration that Marvel also seems to fall in love with.
Yeah, no, he's Shia LaBeouf's dad in Transformers, and was also on Veep, and
those are memorable roles. Sleep well, handsome man. Very funny actor in Transformers. Very memorable with that character, kind of over the top fatherly figure. Hard to forget that guy. But I think in this episode, we talked about it. He kind of has to play concerned friend and play things off, and then gets this weird reveal at the end where he's secretly dastardly and jealous of Magma, and that's he doesn't really get much emotion to show, unfortunately, despite the fact that that's kind of a big turn and a big surprise there.
Yeah, you definitely feel like, for such a ridiculous reveal, that you staged a nuclear meltdown to try to kill your friend so that you could date his wife or whatever. You almost want a more mega maniacal, over the top turn there, and instead I think he tries to play it off more subtle than that, more like soap opera, which Marvel historically very soap opera-y comic books, so maybe that fits the vibe they were going for. But yeah, he definitely plays it more understated than maybe you would hope for a reveal that is that sort of over the top. I feel like you almost want a more mega maniacal villain at that point. But hey, that's not Mr. Dunn's fault. So it's like we said, maybe just a problem in the script that the voice acting and voice directing from Andrea Romano could not solve for us.
That's right. So moving on, we have the GOAT, the legend, the man, the myth. It's Corey Burton, who plays, I think he plays at least 4 voices, if not 5 different voices in this episode, but he is credited mostly with the voice of our unfortunately mustachioed General Norman. He's pretty much just doing Corey Burton voices throughout this. It's not, he plays one of the cops that has to react to magma destroying the cop car. I thought that's where he kind of gets to show the most of his emotion, but I guess he does get to show a little bit when he's yelling like fire at the army to destroy the gigantic, terrific trio building. Not a ton to write home about for Mr. Burton, but always great to hear him in a place here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. He is in fact the general with the unfortunate mustache, but we won't hold that against him because I don't think he had any say in design.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that probably wasn't his choice. And then getting into we'll get into our terrific trio here a little bit. We have another legendary voice actor. It's so cool to hear both him and Corey Burton in the same cartoon, just because of their legendary status, I feel like, together. But Jeff Glenn Bennett is the voice of Stuart Lowe, aka 2D Man. I think he plays a couple voices in addition to 2D Man as well, but we don't get a lot of emotion or dialogue from 2D Man. There's a little bit here or there. He gets the kind of one heroic introduction, as we mentioned, where he says, "I'll catch you," or whatever he says when the guys are falling out of the sky. Which is corny and fits in with the idea of introducing this new superhero team. So I think he nailed it. He's a pro. He's on the in the discussion for the most famous voice actors of all time, Johnny Bravo himself. So I have nothing to say but good things about Mr. Bennett. So nothing here would take that away from me.
Yeah, he's the only one who doesn't have an alliterative name.
Yeah,
of our. Which I assume SL or ST and then NL. I guess that's Stan Lee. Like that's the only thing I could think of why he didn't get an alliterative name is that they gave him initials that match Stan Lee or
that's pretty cool.
An ST first name. So that was kind of my thought. I would love to hear anyone else's theories if Stuart Lowe means anything to Marvel Comics fans that I'm just not aware of. Beyond that, I would love to hear people. You can let us know, tweet us or hit us up on Instagram or whatever and let us know. But yeah, that was my only thought of when I saw that name Stuart Lowe. I was like, everybody else is the classic Marvel, alliterative first and last names. Even Hodges has that. So I was like, it's weird that 2D Man's the only one who doesn't. But then I thought, oh well, maybe that's a nod to Stan the Man.
I think maybe you take, so obviously in the real Fantastic Four, you have Reed Richards, you have Sue Storm, you have Johnny Storm, and then you have Ben Grimm. So 2 of your 4 do have the alliterative name. I think you're onto something with the idea of it being Stan Lee. The ST sound with the single syllable last name certainly fits the homage there. So I like that. But yeah. Moving on.
But yeah, to your point, Mr. Bennett. Yeah, Mr. Bennett does a very, very good job. Like I said, because they kind of reverse the roles, and the stretchy guy isn't the smart one. Yeah, he doesn't get much to do, but he, always turning in grade A work with what he's given.
Absolutely. Then playing, I did not mention Barbara Gordon, of course. We have Stockard Channing, who's voicing Barbara in here. We've talked a couple different times about the different voices for Barbara. She's obviously cast a couple of different times in the original Batman the Animated Series, New Batman Adventures. She has 2 voices here in Batman Beyond, but I think she's perfectly fine. I feel like for this episode, she has to do the phone call with the guy who has the hostages, and that's pretty much it. It's her, and then commanding the forces to go into the room once they hear the explosions go off. But not a lot of dialogue otherwise. That would have been something interesting, maybe to see Barbara come to grips with the fact that there's a new superhero team and that she kind of has to accept it because it's government endorsed versus versus going with what we going with we know that she doesn't like Batman, so her being forced to kind of accept this type of superhero help would have been an interesting choice, I feel like. But yeah. Moving on back to our terrific trio, by the way. So playing the voice of Mary Michaels, aka Freon, we have Laura San Giacomo. So Mrs. Giacomo, best known probably for her role on Just Shoot Me. She was also in Pretty Woman and Sex Lies and Videotape, but I had one of those shows where I have seen episodes of it. It was one of those shows that was in syndication. No idea that there were 150 episodes
Oh my gosh.
that existed. Ran from 1997 to 2003. So a David Spade driven vehicle there as far as the old fashioned kind of sitcom is concerned.
I just assumed we were done with David Spade by the year 2001. That's kind of crazy that it made all the way to 03. Like,
it's that post 9/11 Just Shoot Me is still around. That blows my mind.
That's insane.
Yeah, but what's funny, I feel like, in this, her voice, once you know who it is, you can kind of hear her voice. She has a more distinct, raspy, kind of that, classic, just a little bit more weathered voice. So you can kind of match it when you see it, but she also doesn't have a ton other than maybe that horrific scream at the end that she has to emote.
Oh yeah,
as she's destroyed. That really kind of hammers home the pain and anguish that Batman allowed her to go through. But I think she's fine.
Yeah, I think she does a solid job. Again, I don't think a ton's asked of her until the end there, but yeah, does a good solid job. And yeah, I think, like you said, just because, like you said, the uniqueness of how she speaks and that rasp to her voice reminds me of I'm blanking on the actress from Frasier who plays Volcana, but
yes, 100%.
But
Roz,
same kind of
Roz, right? The Roz character. Yep.
Yes. Perry Gilpin, I think is the name. Yes, it reminded me of her in the sense that it's like, even though like that character isn't necessarily like the greatest, most well-written villain of all time, like she brings such a unique quality just because of the uniqueness in her voice. And I feel like that's the same here for Miss Giacomo with her performance.
Absolutely. And then rounding out our terrific trio, playing Dr. Mike Morgan, aka Magma, is Robert Davey. So Robert, interestingly enough, Mr. Davey is probably best known. Listen to this trio of just incredible. Well, it's really a quadrilogy of films that he participated in. So 1985, he was in The Goonies. So he played Jake in The Goonies. 1988, he was in Die Hard. His character played Big Johnson in Die Hard. 1989, he was in License to Kill, the James Bond movie, playing Franz Sanchez. And then 2014, he was in The Expendables 3. So quite the gamut of different franchises and memorable movies there. The last one maybe said with a tongue firmly planted in cheek. But Mr. Davey has a lot of the responsibility here for kind of the emotion, both from, as we talked about, him struggling to come to terms with the fact that he looks like a monster. He also has, the buzz off, get out of my way, kid, interaction with Batman when he's stealing the cube. And then ultimately when he has the sort of come to Jesus music with Howard Hodges at the end, he really has to kind of let the cat out of the bag that he's not a good guy. He's an evil guy. And then the back and forth with Terry, I feel like at the end too, is kind of really where he gets to shine. And that line about him not being a hero feels like maybe the most memorable line that he gets in this episode. But yeah, some decent stuff from him. I think it's a little bit understated, I feel like, as far as his performance is concerned. It's kind of, he doesn't get a lot of emotion. Like, it feels like they maybe could have let him have a little bit more, anger, being upset. It does kind of graduate, I feel like, as he kind of becomes untethered as the episode goes along. But by the end of it, I feel like his kind of subtle ruthlessness and decision to turn to evil is kind of effective in that little bit of an understated tone.
Yeah, totally agree there. It's definitely understated, but I think he has a real gravitas to him, and I think, again, something that I always think of, especially if you go back and you look at those very early, the Jack Kirby Fantastic Four, like these almost like Shakespearean monologues that the Thing would have, or like and obviously Stan Lee was involved too, but but how I think of that, like that sort of very melodramatic, very almost soap opera level. So, when he's being all accusatory towards Hodges before he, actually knows that something's up, and then, his reaction to the little girl, being terrified of him, and, and all that. Like, yes, he leans into the melodrama, but to your point, a little bit more in an understated way, as opposed to going full ham with it. So I think he does a good job.
Absolutely, and that leaves us with our heroes for our true heroes for the final bit here. We have, of course, Kevin Conroy as Bruce. Doesn't get a ton to do as well. I also didn't mention because he's also not included for whatever reason here in the general voice cast on. I guess this is just the top cast. I didn't mention Matt. Who's
Ryan O'Donoghue as
Matt. Ryan. I did not mention Ryan O'Donoghue as Matt McGinnis. So forgive me. And then I don't know who did the voice of the other little boy, but that was equally excited. It may have been one of the other kids. I don't know. Doesn't not credited. Maybe it was Ryan O'Donoghue doing two voices. I don't know. But our hero, of course, for the story, Terry, and his support system, Bruce. Not a ton for Bruce to do other than yell kind of his famous Batman Beyond lines. I feel like Terry, get out of there. Terry yells that a couple different times. He gives the sort of unimpressed "we'll see" about the terrific trio, but the main dialogue that we get from Terry, which again isn't a lot because the focus is really on this new super team, is more of the kind of back and forth with kind of wrestling with this idea of him being a hero or not. He does get the one little interaction with Matt at the toy store, which is a fun one because they're usually at odds, but he decides to buy Matt an ice cream cone since he's given his support to Batman. Matt is clearly suspect of Terry's motives in offering him ice cream, so that one's pretty funny. But yeah, I didn't think there was a ton to do for either of our Batmen for this episode, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not really his episode. It's really carried by our terrific trio. It's kind of the main plot, and then Terry's just kind of hanging around in the background until that third act when he has to go in and fight. So it's probably more oofs and ughs for Mr. Friedel and not much to do for Bruce either. So yeah, nothing wrong with their performance. I think he does a good job in that final scene when he's kind of trying to reason with Magna, but yeah, nothing too much to write home about. Certainly not one that would be on the great performances of Mr. Friedel's career.
For sure. Yeah. So our original scores, Liam, I gave voice acting a 5. You gave it a 6. I'm tempted to leave it around there. I do think Mr. Davies, his understated kind of Almost lack of emotion kind of does feed into an interesting performance, but I'm not going to split hairs. I'm not convinced enough to change my score, so I think I'd probably leave it at a 5.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna argue with my past self over a point or two. So yeah, 6, 7 somewhere in there seems right to me. Good solid outing from all involved, but nothing that really stood out to me as truly great either. So
there we go.
So yeah, that will begin to wrap us up here. Thank you so much for everybody for listening, not just this week, but to all of our Super Fantas Month episodes that we did this month. Of course, if you missed any of them, we revisited all 3 parts of the Superman's DCAU origins and The Last Son of Krypton, parts 1 through 3. We also did a special bonus episode talking about the new live-action Superman movie in theaters, and of course now we wrapped it up with the Fantas portion here. A lot of fun. The re-reviews, like we said, we try not to go to that well too often, but we thought it was just like a perfect storm with how often are a Superman and a Fantastic Four movie going to come out in the same month? Probably never again. So it was a lot of fun putting this together. We had a lot of fun. As far as re-reviews go, that's always a great thing. You can hit us up, like Cal said, whether you do so at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. That's the number one way to get our attention, certainly, is to throw us $1 or $2 and then make your suggestions. But obviously we will take them on social media as well. But speaking of buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, I believe we do have a question from one of our listeners this week.
That's right, Liam. We have a question this week from Kevin, who's got an interesting question about toys. We love talking toys here. So Kevin sent us a question. He said, so Kevin is actually, I hope I'm not getting in trouble here using his government name. So follow Kevin. He's at DC Animated Customs on Instagram. Does some really incredible stuff with creating custom action figures. He's a big supporter of ours, and we appreciate him for being a supporting member of our team here. So his question, we mentioned that sequence where Matt and Terry are in the toy store with all the Terrific Trio merchandise. He says, going with the merch idea, would you? Sorry, my bad. Since we saw the merch for the Terrific Trio in the episode, did you want figures of these guys when you guys saw this episode as kids? Did it make enough of an impact, or did you forget about it pretty quickly? Great question, Kevin. Thanks. Appreciate that. Liam?
Yes. I mean, we've talked about this quite a few times over the years. I wanted figures of every Batman Beyond villain. He had some of the coolest designed villains in like the history of superhero animation, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, Terrific Trio figures, a Magma, Freon, and 2D Man, 3-pack. That's getting that revs my engine a little bit. That's exciting. That would be amazing. And yeah, when there's in-universe action figures in an episode, that definitely always does stand out for me immediately as the idea of what that would be like in the real world. So yes, definitely. Maybe and this is not a complaint about the Terrific Trio, probably not even in the top 5 most toyetic Batman Beyond villains, quite frankly. But yes, absolutely, in a line where we got all of his rogues gallery, the way we did with the Kenner B-Tass run, where we got pretty deep by the end there. Absolutely, I would have totally loved a Terrific Trio pack of action figures.
Yeah, that's a good call. I don't remember it being impactful as a kid. I mean, to the point that you just made, anytime that you see in-universe toys, you're like, boy, that would be cool. So I'm sure that may have been my thought. I didn't think of it. It hasn't stayed with me, I would say, for 30 plus years or whatever, 20 some plus years that this episode has been in existence. But I will say that when rewatching it today, I was like, boy, do I want Terrific Trio action figures and shirts and pants and underpants. That's something that I would kill for nowadays. But it is a miscarriage of justice that the people that did the character designs for this show went out of their way to make visually interesting characters, and whoever was responsible for the Hasbro Kenner toy lines during that time may be the biggest fumble ever, because they've never recovered. We've never gotten in proper form the characters that we should have, and barring some sort of miraculous continuance from Mattel, or if Todd McFarlane still continues to make toys in some form or fashion, DC toys, then we still will go for years now without having that remedied. So, good question. Would definitely appreciate some now. Hint, hint. Maybe even if they're customs.
Awesome. Thanks again so much to Kevin and all of our supporters, again, at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. That is the number one way you can support us directly, financially. Of course, if you look in the show notes, you can also find the links to our store where you can pick yourself up a hat or a sticker or a shirt or something. That's another great way to support us. But there's also plenty of free ways you can support us. The number one free way to support us, of course, is to make sure you're subscribed to us on wherever you are listening to this podcast. If it lets us, if it gives you like a 1 to 5 rating, please give us 5 stars. If it lets you write a review, please write a review. All of those things help bump us up in the all-important algorithms that these tyrannical tech companies, who are all our best friends, have going on. And then, of course, we also have our new YouTube channel. We're flying solo now. So if you can look in the show notes and make sure you're subscribed to us on YouTube, even if you don't listen to the show via YouTube. I've been trying to get some of the older episodes uploaded, trying to start with like our guest episodes and other one, as well as our new episodes going up there every single Saturday. So I would appreciate you subscribing to us there. Another great way to support us is, of course, our socials. We are at DCAU Review on everything. We're most active on Twitter/X and also, of course, Instagram. That's the best way to get a hold of us in a timely fashion. At least we do check our threads in our Blue Skies as well, and even our Facebooks once in a while. But if you're trying to get our attention quickly, it's definitely better to go for one of those first two. But however you choose to support us, we do appreciate it, and we hope you will continue supporting us and listening as we go forward into the month of August. And we will be heading back to a show we actually haven't dusted off in a while, mostly because we don't have that many episodes left. So we will be heading back to the portion of the DCAU timeline occupied by Justice League Unlimited. First time we've been back there in a while, Cal. And we're going to kind of pick up where we left off with another episode from the final season of Justice League Unlimited.
That is right, Liam. We are going to be taking a look at the Boston Brand helmed Deadman episode, aptly titled Dead Reckoning. We get a chance to see here Batman interacting with the afterlife and the spiritual world and all that stuff. Well, we get to see Deadman interacting with it. And we see a whole bunch of other fun stuff that takes place there. All whilst the Gorilla Grodd Legion of Doom story continues, and we learn a little bit more about their plans. So we get to see a little bit of that. Guess what? Superman also in the episode. So lots of fun as we get to see a bunch of different things and some fun moments happen, nerd out, talk about it, and a really interesting character that was, maybe we'll talk a little bit about him being introduced in the comics.
Absolutely. Can't wait to talk about Deadman's DCAU origins next week. But until then, I'm Liam.
And I'm Cal.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.